everyone. My name is John Beddows, and I am the Mayor of Gananoque. As part of your TV's election coverage, I've done 15-minute interviews with the candidates in Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes. We pre-circulated the same questions to all candidates that speak to issues common to all of us in the riding, and these will be addressed in the first 10.5 minutes of each interview. The last 4 minutes are generally reserved for each candidate to put their message forward. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and my thanks to your TV and the candidates for this opportunity to help inform all of us on their positions and to create an informed, empowered electorate that votes issues. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our candidate interviews for the position of MPP in Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes. I'm currently sitting with Mr. Chris Wilson, who is the NDP candidate for our riding. Mr. Wilson, thank you for agreeing to join us today. Would you please introduce yourself to the voters of our riding and tell us why you believe you are the best choice for the job of our MPP?
Yeah, certainly. First, I just wanted to thank you for setting up this opportunity.
Oh, my great pleasure.
There's not a lot of opportunity to speak to the voters in the riding, so thank you so much. It's very valuable to me. The reason I'm running for political office started in 2014. I had just married my wife, my late wife Rachel. I was 28, she was 26. We immediately fell sick. So I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and she was subsequently diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And the healthcare system in Ontario let us down. We grew up thinking that if you got sick and you went to the doctor or the hospital that you get appropriate treatment, but it wasn't the case for us. I had to look elsewhere and even the US for guidance for treatment in New York, and it really let me down. So when I was at my darkest moments of illness, thinking I might not ever recover, I made a deal with whatever the power was above, that if I ever recovered, I'd spend the rest of my life working for the community and working for patients to make our healthcare system better.
So this isn't just an election issue, this is deeply personal for you, the healthcare system.
It is deeply personal, yeah.
Okay.
But that led me to look into politics more, and the more I looked into it, the more I was drawn to the NDP party. I saw decisions being made by the other two major parties that were not appropriate, and I started to get involved with the NDP, and then I ran in the 2022 provincial election here in Leeds Grenville. Got to know how the system works, and now I'm back in 2025, and yeah, looking to do good work in the community and earn people's votes.
Thank you very much. Moving to the second question on our list. Free trading inside Canada would enhance Ontario's economy and the economic prospects of all Canadians. What is your party's position on Ontario leading on the elimination of interprovincial trade barriers to finally create free trade between Canadian provinces?
The Ontario NDP fully supports Ontario leading the charge with reducing the trade barriers between the provinces. Okay. I think that Canadians are great at working together, and as long as we can protect the individual industries and the workers in those industries, that we should work towards free trade across Canada. Okay.
There's been a lot of noise in the news about President Trump and tariffs, but one of the underlying reasons seems to be about onshoring manufacturing back to the US.
Yeah.
There are several large manufacturers in our riding that are US-based companies. So how do you specifically, in our riding and your party generally, plan to work to ensure the riding doesn't lose full-time jobs because of tariffs in the near term, but also in the long term?
Yeah, it's a great question. Losing jobs to tariffs is something that nobody wants to see in Ontario. The Ontario NDPs propose that we work directly with the companies that are going to be most affected to find new supply chains and new export markets, whether it's in Canada or internationally. We're also going to, in certain situations, some of the workers can be retrained and even enter different industries, more future-proof industries that can help Ontario grow. We plan a lot of infrastructure spending and building, so potentially we could pivot some of the workers there. And we're also going to launch a Buy Ontario campaign. So okay. We're going to focus on government contracts being sourced locally, and just encouraging the general population to buy products that are made in Ontario.
Okay. And do you have any thoughts about how that would work inside our riding, or just we're going to look at the Buy Ontario piece?
Yeah, I mean, inside the riding, there's a lot of manufacturers like 3M, for example. I think partnering directly with them and asking them their thoughts and other industry experts on how we can protect jobs in their company. Of course, we want to protect good jobs and well-paying jobs too, right? So there's a lot of decisions being made currently that are impacting good unionized jobs, like the beer store, for example. And we're going to make sure that we protect the well-paying jobs, because that's a way that Ontario gains more revenue from the tax base. Is we have a better paying populace.
Okay. Moving on to agriculture. As I'm sure you're aware, the agricultural economy is profoundly important to the economy of our riding. Agriculture is a huge driver. How does your party see defending supply management in agriculture? Because during the last round of trade talks under President Trump, supply management was something he wanted to change.
Yeah.
So how does your party see defending supply management in agriculture and agricultural processing, and to access to export markets in the face of potential pressure from south of the border?
Yeah, it's a great question. The agriculture industry here in Leeds Grenville is vital to the economy. I think it's very important that we work with the farmers to make sure that they're taken care of. The supply chain management aspect of the question, the Ontario NDP and myself are very much in favor of protecting the supply chain management system that we have in place. Making sure that our neighbors and friends who are in the agriculture industry have a secure revenue base and a secure cost for their products that they're producing is very important. So I believe under the North America Free Trade Agreement that was just negotiated, there were concessions made on the supply management when it comes to dairy farmers. So I'd like to see more protection in place with supply management and less concessions in that regard. And even see potentially if we can expand it to include other agricultural industries like maple syrup producers, for example. Quebec has a great supply chain management system for maple syrup, and we could look to expand it and make ours even better.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question. What is your position on rural school closures?
My position and the Ontario NDP's position on any school closures is we don't want to see schools close. We want, if anything, to open up more schools, fix the schools that we have in place. So we've just proposed a $830 million spending to fix all the backlog of repairs in our schools. I think there are schools in our riding that are under threat of closure right now. One that comes to mind is in North Augusta. So we would fight to make sure that no rural schools close. I think it's important that children get to go and learn in the communities that they live. So we'll very much fight to protect the rural schools from closure.
Okay. Moving forward to the economy writ large, given the province of Ontario has the highest per capita debt in the Dominion, our per capita revenue is the lowest in the Dominion, and our per capita spending is the lowest in the Dominion, and that this last budget included a deficit, how does your party plan to raise provincial income to eliminate deficit and pay down debt?
Yeah, that's a big question for sure. I think when it comes to raising the revenues, we need to find better paying jobs. So if the people in the province or in the riding are making more money, that means more revenue coming into the province. So if we can attract well-paying employers to the community, if we can encourage unions to grow and strengthen and make sure that the tax base is earning more money, that'll help us gain more revenue. Okay. From the deficit side, I think there's a lot of waste going on currently in the government at all levels. So, you know, cutting the waste, definitely looking at the decisions that are being made that everyone can see as wasteful, like the beer store, for example. I talk to my community, I talk to my friends and family, and the people that don't have access to a doctor, they would gladly give up drinking for the rest of their lives to get access to a doctor. We can wait 1 year. That would have saved us over $1 billion, and that could be put to good work.
Okay. So access to primary care is a burning issue for unrostered Ontarians. What is your party's plan to address the shortage in primary care access in the near term and the long term? How do you see that working in the riding? And as an element of an integrated solution, are you in favor of allowing registered nurse practitioners to have their own OHIP billing numbers?
Yeah, so I wasn't able to get any feedback from the party on the OHIP billing numbers for the registered nurses, but surface level, it seems like a good idea to me to get the proper service to the community in a short-term vision.
Okay.
Also, too, getting rid of some of the barriers for international doctors and nurses to practice in Ontario would go a long way to fixing the short-term problem. And working with the College of Physicians, or the governing body that's responsible for how many doctors get into schools. So working with them to see if we can increase those numbers and allow more doctors to be trained here domestically, I think would go a long way to helping the long-term vision. Also, too, you know, limiting illegal bills like Bill 124 that caps people's wages at 1% in the industry is going to go a long way to attract people back to working in the healthcare sector. I don't know about you, but if my wages were limited to 1% raise during the highest inflationary period in our lifetime, I'd be frustrated and I'd be looking to exit the industry, not enter the industry.
Okay. We're actually at 4 minutes. This is the portion of the interview which is reserved for you to put yourself forward.
Oh, wow.
There are some unanswered questions on the list, so we could either skip these and go to you, sir, and I'll offer you the time. Your choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could maybe talk about the unhoused. So that was
Certainly.
One of the questions
It
on
was.
there.
So the AMO has reported that there's 82,000 unhoused Ontarians, 0.5% of the population.
Yeah.
And given that, what is your party's vision for how to house people at scale, and whether or not that should be driven centrally by the province?
Yeah, and the party's stance on that is it should be driven centrally by the province. Currently, a lot is being left on the shoulders of the municipalities. So we're looking to upload the costs from the municipalities so that we can take on the responsibility of housing the people of Ontario. We're going to create 30,000 assisted living homes to help get people off the street, and we're going to enhance the Canada-Ontario Home Benefit, if I got that name right, which provides supports for people that are just starting to fall through the cracks. Their studies show that if you can just get a couple $1,000s in people's hands before they become homeless, it prevents a lot of people from becoming homeless in the first place. And it's very much more cost efficient to prevent people from being homeless than it is to get them back off the street afterwards.
I hear you, sir. We are now at 2.5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so I just want to let everybody know that we can see out there that decisions are being made that are not in the best interest of the people. For example, Steve Clark was the Minister of Housing. After the Greenbelt scandal was released, thanks to Marit Stiles and the NDP, he had to resign as Minister of Housing. So we gave him, the voters of Leeds Grenville gave him the #1 job to fix our housing crisis, and he failed the community. He had to resign, and now he's asking for the job back. So if you want someone who's from the riding, lives in the riding, who cares deeply about the community, who is an honest, hardworking, competent person that really just wants to spend the rest of his life doing good work for the community, you should vote for me. If this riding votes for an MPP, it'll instantly make me one of the most influential MPPs in the party. It'll allow me to run for leadership of the party in the future. And we could have a NDP working class party that's actually on your side, working hard to make your life better. And I can only imagine the future of Leeds Grenville if we had the leader of the NDP, the Union Party, the working class party in our riding, making decisions for our community. So that's what I ask the voters is trust me with your vote. I'll get it done. I'm not gonna let you down. And if you wanna know more about me, please email me, reach out, and I'd be happy to meet with you.
Yes, and your contact information will be included in banners at the end of this interview, so people will know how to reach out to you.
Awesome.
We have roughly 45 seconds left. Is there anything you'd care to add, Mr. Wilson?
That's pretty much about it. I am who I say I am. I've lived a very difficult life. I suffered 10 years of illness. I lost my wife. She was 35. Politics and giving back to my community is #1 priority for me. Work is a far distant priority. So I'm doing good work in my community, and I'm just asking to get paid for it and expand what I can do to the rest of the riding.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Chris Wilson. He is the NDP candidate for the position of MPP of Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for participating in the process, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
It's my great pleasure this evening to be sitting with Ms. Lorna Jean Edmonds, who is the Liberal candidate for the riding of Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes. Thank you very much for agreeing to join us.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to invite you to please introduce yourself and tell the electors of our riding why you believe you are the best choice to be their MPP.
Sure. First of all, I want to say why I'm doing this in the first place. I want to win this campaign because I think a Liberal government is the best value for this riding at this particular time, and I think it's the best riding or the best region and the best province that we want to have as a global knowledge economy. Secondly, I want to start a conversation because we're not having a conversation, and we've decided to have an election during a time where it's very difficult to do it. So I'm really grateful that we have a chance today to do this, that we have the newspapers, the radios, the social media, which I've got to tell you, I have 165,000 views in the last week, which I never expected, but starting the conversation about our values, our rights, and our privileges to be part of Ontario is key because things are struggling right now. The reason why I'm doing it is for two reasons. One, rural Ontario, I believe, has been abandoned, particularly during this PC government. Before too, but we've had a chance to change it. They said they were going to get it done, and they haven't. Secondly, I'm a grandma, I'm a mother. And when I go to the doors, you know what I hear? I hear we don't have access to health care. Our kids' school system, it's struggling. Our teachers are struggling. We're not getting the education we want. I can't afford to pay my rent. I can't afford to buy a house. I can't afford to eat. These are serious issues. And if you look around our riding, did we have homelessness 10 years ago? Not anywhere near the scale that we have it today. The nice thing about me is I bring a lot of experience to the table in all of those sectors. I started out in healthcare, working at Kingston Psychiatric Hospital. I then moved on to the Health Sciences Centre and worked at Kingston General Hospital. And then I worked at Queen's, and I was involved in the reformation of healthcare, particularly working with people with disabilities for a decade. And during that time, we established community-based rehabilitation and primary health care in a number of areas around the world and within Canada. So I have a lot of experience in that area. Then I transitioned and I worked with public, private, and the broader research community to help mobilize research and services in manufacturing, in the cultural sector, in the technology sector, in the innovation sector. So I know that business is good for us, but it has to be coupled with a strong social infrastructure. And thirdly, I ended my career building talent because it's a knowledge economy that we're in. And I was a university executive both in Canada and in the United States. And I think my skills and experience in the United States are pretty timely, actually. What's really nice about the Liberal government and the Liberal vision today is that not only has Bonnie put forward a platform that's good for Ontario, it's also good for our riding. You just have to look at it. It's strong, and I have the track record of delivering, and I have the track record of engaging with you. And together, I am confident we will mobilize resources to our riding in ways that we haven't experienced before.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving forward to the pre-circulated questions.
Yeah.
Free trade inside Canada, often discussed now, would enhance Ontario's economy and the economic prospects of all Canadians.
Yeah.
What's your party's position on Ontario leading the charge on free trade in Canada and dropping internal trade barriers?
Well, I think most people in Ontario would say it's about time. And Bonnie and all of us are firmly behind this. And you know, the one thing I've learned through my experiences, especially ones in crisis, they often create opportunities for us to rethink some of our own strategies and the ways we do business. And this is a good one because we do have many trade barriers. Even our health sector has barriers. Even our education has barriers for our teachers. And this would be a unique opportunity to build back into Canada, build back into Ontario, a strong balance so that we have an Ontario vibrant economy, we contribute to a vibrant national economy, and we contribute to a vibrant global economy. But it's a balance. So I think this is actually a really opportune, and if I might add, Bonnie is a very good negotiator. She's a fair negotiator, and she has a lot of experience. You just have to look at what she did with Mississauga. I also have a lot of experience. I have negotiated many contracts, many programs, both in health, in homelessness, in the research and innovation sector, and in bringing talent to Canada and sending our talent abroad.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've had an amazing career. And like, it's just finally, it's really nice to see that we're starting to look at our own Canadian Ontario context and saying, how can we do better? How can we make our lives better? Tapping into our own expertise and our own resources. Yeah, it's very exciting, actually.
I agree with you. It is a very interesting time, and an interesting time to have an election. Speaking of the international context, a lot of the tariff noise seems to be aimed at onshoring manufacturing back to the U.S. We have several U.S.-based large employers in manufacturing in this riding. How does your party generally, and how do you specifically, plan to work to ensure the riding doesn't lose full-time jobs because of tariffs in the near term, but also in the long term?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So my worry is that we will be deeply affected under the PC leadership because, as I said earlier, I think they have basically abandoned rural Ontario. And so when we look at what the Premier will bring forward, will he be thinking about us? And I'm not so sure. If you look at most of his cavalier strategies, which we've all experienced, and he said he was going to get it done and he didn't, they're mostly for the GTA. And they're mostly for workers in the GTA and broader around the community. Not a lot has come to our riding or any other rural riding for that matter. So yeah, I am concerned. Now, if you look at the Liberal Party, we have been building a business case or whatever your strategy that you want to call it for the public service, where we want to make sure that we enable you to navigate any changes, any crisis, whether it's a pandemic or the tariffs. And so as you can see with Bonnie's recent platform, she's going to make sure that our businesses that are affected are supported, whether it's lower interest rates, whether it's actually investing in infrastructure and targeted infrastructure in the short term to help us get through this period, but we will help you. But the other critical piece, which is again our weak link, is that in any crisis, you have to have a foundation. And if you look at the Liberal strategy, we want to bring back that social public infrastructure so that we can ride any tide. That's healthcare, that's housing, that's affordability, and that's education. It's building our talent. And if you look at our riding, those areas we're really struggling in. So yeah, I think, you know, if we've already got huge wait times for Emerge, how are we going to support them when we're going to have to focus on the fact that we're losing jobs in our community? You know, it's a double-edged sword. And if you don't think the long term, and that's what Doug Ford has not done. He hasn't set us up to handle these kinds of emergencies because we're weak on the ground, very weak.
Okay. So dovetailing into agriculture, given the critical importance of agriculture in this riding, it's an essential element of the economy of our riding. How does your party see defending supply management in agriculture, agro-processing, and to enable access to export markets in the face of potential pressure from south of the border?
Yeah, again, I think we are all naturally concerned because our beef and our horticulture, we invest a lot in the United States. We rely on them a lot, and we're going to have to rechange that. So the realignment of where we sell our goods is really important. But, you know, unlike Doug Ford, Bonnie promised during her leadership, and she's consistently promised through the whole time, that she will be sure to support the full investment in the risk management program. That was a given from the get-go, that she is very supportive of rural Ontario and the agricultural community, and we know that. And her programs support that. You know, it's business relief, it's tax relief for families, and then again, farmers here in our riding need access to healthcare, they need access to talent, they need access to housing so that they can bring people here to work with them. And if they're sick, they've got access to the kind of services they need. So it's, again, it's that balance between making sure we have the social public infrastructure to support a vibrant economy, whether it's in agriculture or anywhere else. And we have an agricultural base, we want to save it and we want to grow it.
Given that the province of Ontario has the highest per capita debt in the Dominion, the highest and our per capita revenue is the lowest in the Dominion, and our spending per capita is the lowest in the Dominion, and that this year's budget included a deficit, how does your party see increasing provincial income to eliminate deficit and pay down debt?
So I think, you know, like most strategies on the economic files, it is being, on the one hand, steady as you go. I think Ontario is aiming to have a balanced manufacturing, service sector, and innovation sector so that we grow. But we don't want to give up that innovation sector. It's not all about manufacturing. You know, we need to make sure that we have a diversified economy, and that's really important. I would argue that, again, we've put ourselves at risk as a province because rather than being debt-free, as Doug Ford promised he would be and get the job done, he has already carried up a significant debt. And when these tariffs came in, he had an opportunity to cancel the $3.2 billion to the $200 election gimmick that he gave, and he chose not to. You know, he also, in advance, knowing that we could possibly have tariffs, he went ahead with the $2 billion, you know, alcohol in our neighborhood program that if he'd waited 1 year, we would have saved $2 billion. And let me remind you, he talks about it going into the community stores. Yeah, it does, but it also serves the Westons, the Costcos, and the Walmarts. You know, it's these big enterprises who are really benefiting. It's not all of us. So I'm really cautious about that. And then also, you know, when you think about our economy, he's got to be investing in our infrastructure. We need a healthy population. And I'm just going to mention homelessness, because if you have homelessness of a significant degree, that affects our communities. It affects our small businesses. It affects the security. Homeless people feel insecure, we feel insecure. If you provide, and there's the evidence to show it, that if you provide permanent housing and support, not only is that good for the economy, it also reduces our healthcare bills. And so we need that critical balance between public infrastructure to safeguard and build our knowledge economy, a healthy, talented knowledge economy for national growth and global growth by Ontario. That will help us succeed. And I really am very committed to both, you know.
So we're the 4 minutes that was reserved for you to put yourself forward, we're actually just over the 3-minute mark. Okay. So I can continue with questions, or you could go into your free time if you prefer.
No, continue with the questions.
Certainly. The Municipal Property Assessment Corporation hasn't done the province-wide reassessment in the last 8-9 years. What's your party's position on doing that in the 25-26 fiscal year? And if the answer is you don't want to, then when would you see doing it?
So I think, of course, we want to do a municipal assessment. I think that's a given. But I also want us to relook at how we manage our municipal infrastructure, because they're already super in debt. And our rural areas are more affected than anybody because the way the property taxes are. You know, we have the same roads, the same services, but we have less dense populations, so our property taxes are harder. So yeah, I'm very committed that we relook at our investment structure for the municipalities, so again, that we support all of our other infrastructure.
Okay. What is your position on rural school closures?
I think rural school closures are an artifact of not building within our rural area a population base. Okay. You know, and if with a rural environment, you don't want to close rural schools, because all you do is then you close the community. We have to build an economy in our community. We need to bring population to our rural community and to our riding.
So coming back to homelessness for a half second.
Sure.
What is your position, your party's position, on the province's responsibility to deliver centrally at scale supportive housing for people who are unhoused?
Okay, well, we haven't done enough. We know that, so we need to do more, and the Liberal Party is committed to that. And so what you will see is that we will give relief to our first generation of owners. You've already seen that we will, you know, drop the $170,000 average for the development charges. We will, you know, reduce the land transfer tax or get rid of them, and we will have rent geared to income. Okay. But
we're down to 30 seconds.
Okay.
So please, if you want to close, I would offer you that opportunity right now.
So folks, get out to vote. That's what I would urge you to do. And I want you to vote for me, because I will bring the experience, and you can see from the Liberal platform, we bring a program, a policy framework that is for our rural riding, unlike the PC government.
So thank you very much, Ms. Lorna Jean Edmonds, the Liberal candidate for our riding. Thank you for coming today to be interviewed, and thank you for participating in the process. And I wish you safe travels during the campaign.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
It's my great pleasure to be sitting here tonight with Ms. Fiona Jager, who is the candidate for the Green Party in the riding of Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes. Thank you very much for agreeing to join us.
Thanks for having me.
So I'd like to ask you and invite you to introduce yourself to the electors of our riding, and please tell us why you believe that you are the best choice to be our MPP.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So I'm running for the Green Party, as you said. I really became interested in politics through career experiences that I had previously. So I'm a nurse. I've worked clinically for over a decade. Currently, I teach nursing in our riding at the Brockville St. Lawrence College campus. I'm also a mother of 3 children. And so these experiences in nursing and as a parent really led me to see that a lot of the things that the problems that both my children, my students, and my clients were facing were things that didn't have like one-off solutions. They weren't things that I could fix just through better nursing care. They were things that required political solutions. For example, for clients, I served clients that had mental health and addictions issues who were living in the community, and housing was a huge issue. Availability of services was a huge issue. And as I look at my own children, I see that they're going to live in a world where they have less access to buying their own home, where cost of living is very high. And when I look at my students, I see them out in healthcare situations that are beyond what you would expect a student to have to manage because of low staffing and crisis in the healthcare sector. So those are the reasons that brought me here. So if those are reasons that other people are passionate about and they want to see a strong advocate in, then I promise to work for the people of this riding to further our concerns, our shared concerns in these areas. And I specifically am running for the Green Party because I believe and I've experienced that the Green Party cares about these issues. They care about the common person, if you will, everyday issues that people are experiencing in a way that's aligned with my values more than any other party.
Thank you very much. I'm going to dial into the questions now, that the prepared questions which were circulated. So I'm going to, coming out of your introduction, I'm going to go to specific questions out of that.
Okay.
So recent reporting out of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario has identified that there are roughly 82,000 unhoused Ontarians, which is 1/2 of the population. Given that healthcare is a provincial responsibility and that the supportive element of supportive housing is healthcare, how does your party see the province's responsibility to service that need centrally as opposed to municipally?
Yeah, so the Green Party is committed, sees that as a provincial responsibility and is committed to serving that population centrally. So the Green Party has pledged 60,000 permanent supportive housing beds throughout Ontario with sustained funding. So that's a big piece of it. If you talked about how at one point there was the closure of the provincial hospitals that used to house, I assume you're talking about the deinstitutionalization that we experienced in the 90s.
That's an element of this, yes.
Yeah, so really there's 2 pieces of what was going on that we lost in deinstitutionalization, which had many positive aspects but also some negative aspects. So one of the pieces was housing and the other part was intensive treatment. And so we absolutely need supportive housing that's appropriate to that population, that's mandated. I think it's really a travesty that was downloaded from the provincial government to municipalities, and that often from municipalities it's downloaded, not always, but often to private providers. And in my experience, we're not seeing the level of integrity or care in the supportive housing that we do have that we would want to see if we had provincial standards across the province. And that's not for every municipality, but that changes municipality by municipality, and it shouldn't. It should be standardized. The other half of it is treatment. So I spent half of my career working for an assertive community treatment team, and what we did is we served populations that would have been in institutions prior to deinstitutionalization, so people with severe and persistent mental illness. So at that point in time, the province was promised 120 ACT teams. If you look at what we would need now, it would be closer to 160, but we have 90. So there's sort of in my mind, there's 2 tiers where the province needs to keep its promise to that population, who's a population close to my heart. So one is the supportive housing, and the other is the intensive treatment.
Thank you very much. I'm going to flip back to a question that follows on to this one.
Yep.
And it has to do with paying for programs. So given that the province of Ontario has the highest per capita debt in the Dominion, and that our per capita revenue is the lowest in the Dominion, and per capita spending is also the lowest in the Dominion, and that this year's budget includes a deficit, how does your party plan to raise provincial income to eliminate deficit and pay down debt? Because programs have to be paid for.
Yep, 100%. So the green platforms have always been very carefully costed. We take fiscal responsibility very seriously. Our platform for this election, since it's a snap election, actually isn't out yet, though many pieces of it are circulating. So it will be out and costed next week. However, so all those numbers will be there.
Next week is by what date? Because we're
on
recording Wednesday of next week.
So Wednesday, which will be the 12th of February.
Thank you very much.
No problem. So the way that we're going to address the budget issues is that we're going to invest in very different things than the current government. So, for example, we're not going to build a $10 billion highway that paves over farmland. We're not going to support a $200 per person, whether you're in the lowest or the highest income bracket rebate/bribe to the electorate. And we will, but the money will be going towards the type of social programs that I'm talking about that support the most vulnerable people. We do support cutting taxes for people who make under $65,000 a year, but increasing taxes for people in the top tax bracket.
Thank you very much. Free trade inside Canada would enhance Ontario's economy and the economic prospects of all Canadians. What's your party's position on Ontario leading on the elimination of interprovincial trade barriers to finally create free trade between Canadian provinces?
We're 100% keen to work with other provinces to remove interprovincial trade barriers. And we think that this is a nonpartisan issue that needs to involve collaboration across party lines.
Thank you. A lot of news recently about our president to the south and tariffs.
Yes.
And part of the push there seems to be the onshoring of U.S. manufacturing. In our riding, there are several large manufacturers who are branch plants of U.S.-based companies. How do you specifically, and your party generally, plan to ensure the riding doesn't lose full-time jobs because of tariffs in the near term and in the long term?
So again, our party's response to this threat from south of the border is to really say that, again, we need a nonpartisan approach to this issue. This is an important issue where we need to be working across party lines. We need to be creating a task force that represents the people, that includes people from multiple parties, that represents the people of Ontario in trade negotiations strongly. We need to be investing in local supply chains. We need to be aggressively diversifying our trade partners. We need to be creating an investment tax credit to unlock business investments in Ontario. We need a Buy Ontario strategy so that there's rules around public procurement that encourages Buy in Ontario products. We need to create a fund for some of these people in our riding that are going to be and sectors that are going to be disappropriately affected by the possibility of tariffs. And of course, we need to be working with other provinces to remove the interprovincial trade barriers. That's part of that piece as well.
Thank you. So speaking to a riding specific question, given the critical importance of agriculture to the economy of this riding, how does your party see defending supply management in agriculture, agro-processing, and to enable access to export markets in the face of potential pressure from south of the border?
So our party has been committed to preserving farmland and to supporting farmers from day one. Our current leader, Mike Schreiner, is a retired farmer or a post-farmer. Now he's a politician, obviously. Ontario has some of the best farmland in the world, which drives our $50 billion food and farming economy. So one of the things that we would want to do is create an Ontario food belt, which include land in our riding, to permanently protect farmland that's currently being lost to highways, to urban sprawl, and to things like gravel mining. We want to, again, strengthen local supply chains for our farming sector and invest in infrastructure for both small farms and large farms that's missing in Ontario. And again, in terms of managing pressure that's coming from south of the border, a lot of it has to do with, again, aggressively diversifying our trade partners and encouraging the interprovincial trade.
Thank you. Our municipalities, especially those with no urban centers, are pushed to finance obligations to meet service requirements for the residents. Given that the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation province-wide assessment has been deferred multiple times, what's your party's position on doing that reassessment in the 25-26 fiscal year? And if not, then when do you see it happening?
So I don't have an exact date for you, so I'm sorry about that. I'm not going to answer your question directly.
That's an honest answer.
Yeah, thank you. But I can say that our party is committed to working with municipalities. I think that this question is probably coming from some frustration that municipalities and local mayors are feeling about increased pressure put on municipalities for expensive new projects, but no new means of funding. Which is something you're probably better able to speak to than I'm able to speak to. And so really all that I can say at this point with the information I have right now is that we're committed to working with municipalities to make sure that they have the infrastructure to support people first.
Thank you. What is your position on rural school closures?
I am against rural school closures. I think having schools in the communities and offering children the opportunity to go to school in the communities in which they live is absolutely essential. I am a parent of 3 school-aged children, so I have one child at school in Linklater, or the elementary school in Gananoque, and 2 at the high school. They all walk to school, and having a local school isn't just a place for them to learn, a place for them to go every day, a place for them to make friends. It's a place where they really have been invested in the community in really unique ways that wouldn't happen if they were being bussed out somewhere. Them and their friends, I watch them having opportunities to participate in local businesses like the Thousand Islands Playhouse, like the Gan Arts Cafe, other places as well that are taking on co-op students. So the way that local schools allow children to be part of their local communities is something that's near and dear to my heart. The Green Party has pledged to increase per student funding by $15,000 to make up for the $3.1 billion cuts that the Ford government has made to education.
Thank you. So in this interview format, we reserve time at the end for you to put your position forward. Following that last answer, we have about 2.5 minutes left, so we can ask further questions or I can give you the floor.
Sure, maybe I'll just speak to some of the things that are nearest and dearest to my heart.
And I'll let you know when we have 10 seconds to go.
Perfect, thank you. So one of the things we didn't have a chance to talk about much, but you had offered a question on it, was health care. So obviously health care is a big issue for me. You specifically talked about allowing NPs to bill directly through
nurse
OHIP.
practitioners.
Nurse practitioners, yes, thank you. So I do agree that giving nurse practitioners more autonomy and allowing them to bill through OHIP is an important part of meeting the primary care needs in our province, but there's other issues at stake as well. Specifically, OHIP itself needs an overhaul. Our billing system needs an overhaul. So if we just add on NPs, that's not going to be enough. It's just going to be extending something that needs help, and that's a little bit broken. And we also need salaried practitioners and primary healthcare practitioners in primary healthcare centers that are diversified, where you're seeing NPs, physicians, OTs, nurses, PTs, everybody working to serve client needs, as that's a model that works really well, especially for more complex clients. The Green Party does have a strategic plan to increase funding to healthcare, including increasing medical spots and increasing the availability of residencies for international graduates, so that we will be able to service everybody in Ontario with a primary health care practitioner in the next 3 to 5 years. I also wanted to spend a minute speaking of another issue that I'm right in the middle of that's near and dear to my heart, which is what's going on in Ontario colleges right now. So I don't know, I know a lot of people have seen that there's been giant cuts to programming in the college that I work for, but also in other colleges across Ontario. But I don't know if people understand that this is a direct byproduct of chronic underfunding of Ontario colleges by the Ontario government. Colleges are a public-private partnership, and colleges in Ontario have the least per capita funding of any country in Canada.
We're actually at the end of our time.
Okay.
So with that, what I'm going to say is thank you very much, Ms. Fiona Jager, candidate for the Green Party in our riding, for agreeing to participate in this interview today. And I thank you very much for your willingness to participate in the process. Democracy only works if everybody plays. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to meeting you again next time.